You know how we love our books on Late Lunch, and honestly I have to say to everybody, I receive so many books each week and it just wouldn't be possible to cover them all, but I appreciate all the books I get and we try to feature as many as possible. We're known for the books on Late Lunch. Well, let me tell you that I have a book in my possession here called Yankeeland by Lacy Fewer, and it is a remarkable book, may I say, because you're going to hear the story of the book now, because Lacy herself is with me in studio. You are so welcome to Late Lunch.
Thank you, Gerry. I am honoured to be here.
Well, it's my honour to have you with me today. As I said, books are a big part of this show, and I read a lot of books and I feature a lot of writers as well. But the story that underpins this book, I have to say to you, is one of the most unique I have come across. Can I say that to you today?
Oh, that's beautiful.
Fascinating, so it is. So let's step back with you and tell our listeners where this began. So you had a grandaunt, take it from there, a grandaunt who lived in America and 30 years ago.
30 years ago.
Tell them what happened 30 years ago.
So I was travelling back from having been away for a couple of years, as a lot of Irish did in the early 1990s, and I was travelling back through America, and I was in a cousin's house and I was handed 2 black mailbags full of correspondence from a deceased grandaunt's estate. And these were relatives who we had heard had done very well, ran a business, very successful, entrepreneurial, who had emigrated in the early 1900s. I am an avid historian. I have always had a deep interest, particularly in my own history. So I sat down on the floor and I went through these 2 mailbags, and I literally spent from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. uncovering their life. And what started out with such excitement and interest turned into really rather a deep, dark secret that was uncovered in these bags. And for me, Gerry, it was that the letters between 2 cousins, one who lived in Ireland and one who emigrated to America, and how in their lifetimes neither knew the truth of their existence. And that's the most harrowing part of this story.
And the ladies you talk about is Brigid Kelly, who emigrated with her husband Ben and left behind her cousin Molly on this side. And they're the 2 women we're talking about here who corresponded with each other.
Yes, they are. I actually have the letters.
I'm just looking.
I have copies of the letters.
Oh my God.
I'm going to read. Let me tell you where I got the name from the book, first of all, because people ask me that, Gerry. One little line here. So this is from Molly in Wexford, writing to Brigid, who's now in America. And she says in her letter, "I am afraid a trip to Yankeeland is out of the question for us unless we get rich sooner than we expect. Say, why don't you people who have no encumbrance pay a visit to the old land? We would all be delighted to see you." So
the name of the book was known as Yankeeland.
Yankeeland.
In Ireland. As she corresponded across. What part of America did Brigid live in?
So Brigid left Ireland from Queenstown in 1908. She left with her husband. She had only married 3 weeks earlier. And what's really interesting is her brother James travelled with her. And it's a little bit different in that it's not your typical immigrant story. They were rather affluent. They travelled first class aboard the SS Adriatic. So they left Ireland in 1908. They land in New York. Then Brigid and her husband go to Niagara Falls because industrialisation, to work in the aluminium factories. And James, I could only assume, sort of felt like a bit of a spare wheel. He goes off to California. Right. And then in time, Brigid follows him to California.
Okay.
And they never come back to Ireland.
Oh my God, I just often think about that because I had the pleasure of visiting Ellis Island on one of my trips to New York. I went on my own one day and just spent a whole day there. I have to say, if you want to experience something that's really moving, and to think of the people who arrived there and would never ever see Ireland again or other people back here. So this is the circumstances as well. They were affluent. I was going to say that. This was a different thing. They weren't leaving because of necessity. They didn't have to leave at all. But she was pursuing a dream. She wanted to see, what the new land, or the Americas, the Yankeeland as you call it, could offer her in terms of a new life. But here's the sad thing about your bags. I want to go back to them for a moment. You have correspondence in there that each lady wrote and saw on either side. But tell them, there was another bunch of letters in there that...
So the saddest part for me in those bags, Gerry, was that I came across a bundle of letters tied up with a beautiful dark green velvet ribbon. So they were carefully preserved. And that's why I believe these letters found me that morning in 1993. These were letters, Gerry, that were written by Brigid to Molly, to her cousin, the one person in the world that she trusted and loved the most and told her deepest, darkest fears and secrets to. And they had never, ever been opened. So I sat opening these letters.
For the first time.
For the first time. And these letters were Brigid appealing for help from Molly as to how her life had played out. And obviously I don't give away too many spoilers for readers.
But her life didn't turn out at all as she expected to. Because she went over there and you know what comes across in the book and from the letters, which is hard perhaps to fathom nowadays, although it does raise its head, that is the status of women in the world and in different countries in the world. But back then it just jumps off the pages to you to say women were only there for one reason, to bear children and be a wife to a husband who, you know, men rule the world. Looks like in the world today they still bloody do, may I say. But you know, that really came across to me.
So yes, you were dealing from all my research, you're dealing with a very oppressive patriarchal system where the church and obviously the men in society did have control. One aspect that has been interesting in the reviews, and I'm actually really heartened by it, is that I portray Brigid's husband and her brother, you know, they were very good people, Gerry. They were very loving, they were very kind, and they believed they were protecting Brigid, and they believed that they were doing what was right. And, you know, I suppose like herd mentality, they were operating in a system, they were of their time. One of the books I researched on it was a medical journal that was sent out to all physicians in America, and they talk about how a man's brain is 4.5 ounces larger than a woman's brain. So how could a woman expect to compete in society or in education? So this is the time you're dealing with back 100 years ago.
With a lot of men, may I say, that extra is a waste of space. Totally.
No comment.
And I say that as a man today, and that's just I just wanted to mention that there. But that's an interesting point and a scientific based fact as well. I have to ask you this. Why did it take 30 years for you to decide to, you know what I mean, commit the stories and the letters to this wonderful book, Yankeeland?
So yes, the intervening years. So first of all, it was very difficult, Gerry, for me to get information because nobody really wanted to talk about what had happened. So I had uncovered a really, really rich secret that had been kept for a very, very long time, actually going back to the mid-1800s. So first of all, I wasn't really in a position where there was information available. So with the onset of the internet then in the 90s, I was able to start gathering information. I had a very successful career in banking. I had children. So in 2022, I had an opportunity to leave my finance career behind and commit full time, and I have given my heart and soul to this story, and may I say it's been the most enjoyable experience of my life. And I really wanted to honour the women and the stories of many women, not just Brigid and Kate, who have experienced systemic oppression in history.
You see, life gets in the way of many things. It's as simple as that. And may I say, that famous saying in the advertising world that, you know, this has been worth waiting for, to be honest, even though it's been 30 years in the making. It is an unbelievable story. And, you know, you've interpreted brilliantly, may I say, from the letters.
Thank you.
To create the story running through the book. Can I say, without giving it away as well, that when Brigid Kelly went there and she did want to start a family, you know, like any other woman, she felt that, you know, this was the way to make her way. But it didn't happen for her. No,
it didn't. And a woman's worth was absolutely wrapped up in being married, bearing children, how many children you had, you know, the health of your children and the success of your family and your home. That is what a woman's worth was made up of back in those days. So,
and in those unopened letters, is that where that came across to you?
Absolutely. So in the letters from Ireland, Molly had had 3 children, and Molly was all the time in her letters talking about her children.
Yeah.
And even when, you know, in the other letter that I read earlier, why don't you people who have no encumbrance? So you can start to see where Molly is thinking, oh, sure, you're off, Brigid, having a great time in America. You're living the dream. You didn't bother to have children. It's this sort of an attitude of you have made this decision not to do it. And that was just so harrowing for me to think that they had lived their lives and not really known the truth of Brigid's existence. And Molly became bitter. There was another wonderful line in Molly's letter.
Go on, read it. You have it there beside you.
I have it here. So, and again, their husbands did come across very well in the letters. So Molly is writing to Brigid and she says, I am sure Pat does everything to make you comfortable. God gave us both good husbands. I often think of the old days and all our foolishness. However, I suppose we were no worse than others. So she's acknowledging the fact that they both had good men and that they were foolish to have their dreams in their youth. They both dreamed of going to Yankeeland and getting out of that stifling village. And Molly's letters are filled with, there's none of the old crowd to go to anymore. Even in one of her letters, she talks about how there's nothing going on in the village and how there's a mission on at the moment. And she has, isn't that great excitement with an exclamation mark? Like, that's like something I'd say today, Gerry.
Yes.
So it was fascinating. I wrote a piece for my website called They Were Just Like Us, because in the letters, I thought, wow, 100 years ago, they were really the very same as we are today.
Isn't the handwriting beautiful, may I say?
Stunning.
I just look at it here. The writing, and as you say, they were educated people. This is the thing. They were well-educated people. They weren't struggling at all. They were of a class that people probably looked up to. And actually, in one of the letters, you mention that a lady in the local area
Lady Doyne
into the shop in the village too, Molly, and she's writing. You won't believe who came in today, and I could just see that, how she looked, her perfume, you know what I mean?
Well, that was all based on my father's recollections. He remembers these people. The Doyne family did live at Wells House, and I always grew up knowing they were related to the royal family, so they actually did exist. So there's a lot of parts in this story that is true historical fact.
Yes.
So I'm recalling from memory, from my father's childhood, these stories as well. So yeah, it is wonderful to
Yeah, and it
recreate
struck me, that was the aristocracy. Then you had these people who were, comfortable, and then you had people who struggled. That society, as you said a moment ago, well, not a lot has changed, really. There was a system then and there is a system today. Stay with us on Late Lunch. This book is fascinating, fabulous, beautifully researched and wonderfully written. Her debut novel is called Yankeeland. I emphasise debut there. It is your first book.
Yes, absolutely. My first ever.
So, you're going into something completely new, never been before down this road. Did you bounce this off anybody or run it by anybody, before you went seeking a publisher, an editor, a publisher? Or tell us about that end of the story.
So I first of all wanted to do journalism when I did my Leaving Cert in 1989, and I didn't get into the course. I still didn't get into it, and I ended up in banking for 30 years. Had a great career. So this has always been a dream of mine, Gerry, and I did write, when I could, and I would have been involved in articles and magazines. So I always knew I was going to write. I always knew this story was going to be written, and my husband knew. So, but I didn't probably really discuss it until I had the project ready to lift off. So when I was 50, I made myself a promise that I was going to achieve this. And I remember heading into Dublin City with a backpack on my back. And for me, I was at the bottom of a ladder I desperately wanted to climb. And I was going into this world knowing nobody. And I knocked on every single door I could. I attended every literary festival. I was part of the Irish Writers' Centre. I went to every open mic session that was on in Dublin. And I just felt my way through. So then when I started writing, I did have help from a couple of people, a journalist in New Zealand, Richard Howard, Paul Howard's brother. He was very helpful to me as well. But predominantly I waited till the work was complete. And then I met an American publisher, and I suppose I felt that the story would have a big resonance with the 40 million Irish Americans who claim Irish heritage.
Yes.
So I made that decision to go with an American publisher, and it also then meant that on the Irish side that I have been responsible for most of my distribution and marketing, and I have learned so much and I have loved it. Never been so happy.
With an American publisher and you being Irish and an Irish script, may I say, with two Irish women, be it 100 years ago, corresponding with each other, was there any bit of body of work to be done there from the Yankeeland point of view?
I actually wish I had taped some of those Skype calls. I really do. That was fascinating. I used to come off howling with laughter, telling my children, wait till I tell you what they said today. Yes. So they found the Irish colloquialisms very difficult to understand. Yeah. But I was adamant in aspects of it. I had to have it. I had to keep it in there, because anyone who has a true love of Irish heritage will understand how we speak, how we say things, how we behave, how we act. And particularly for my characters like Agnes, the stepmother who comes into the picture, we all know an Agnes. We all know a Biddy. So that was really entertaining. They found some of that a little bit difficult. So I had to Americanise certain words and certain aspects.
Yes. Those bags, I still go back to that. Fate really handed this to you all those years ago. I'm sure that's not lost on you. It was meant to be, wasn't it, really?
I believe it was, Gerry, because I was the youngest of that generation to visit that home. Yet I was the only person that was handed those bags. They had never seen the light of day with any other relative who had visited. And I firmly believe, and I've had a number of coincidences since, I firmly believe that those bags were handed to me for me to really do this story justice and to bring life to Brigid's truth in my lifetime.
To think that there were so many letters never opened and that you were the first to cast your eyes on them is incredible. It really, really is. Does this whet the appetite to go again? You know what I mean? Or, you know, this is a particularly unique type of story and backstory as well. Are you thinking along those lines at all? Maybe I'm jumping the gun here with you.
No, you're not. I've actually already started my next book. Yes, I have. People talk about finding their passion in life. Well, I can tell you I have found mine. I have never, ever felt so alive, so happy. I feel like I'm starting all over again. And it has been wonderful. And I most definitely will be staying in the literary space. And it's really you're very vulnerable when you write a book because you don't know. It's like having a baby. People will love it. People may not like it so much. So the early acclaim gives you so much confidence, Gerry, and it's very humbling. So it has given me the confidence to be a little bit braver with my next book. But I will say I will get an agent and I will have an Irish publisher for my next book. Okay. So yes, so watch this space.
Watch this space is right. Now, interestingly, on the front cover, I'll read the little citation. It says, "It's a fascinating story of dreams, dislocation and above all humanity." And the man who said those words is Professor Brigid Kelly, author of In Search of Madness. And funnily enough, myself and Brendan have spoken a number of times on this show, in particular around COVID times when he was really active with his work and that as well. You know this guy. He's launching your book, isn't he? Is it tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night at 6 p.m. in Hodges Figgis on Dawson Street, and all are welcome. It's going to be a wonderful celebration, and yes, Professor Brigid Kelly will be there to launch it. He is a compassionate and passionate advocate for mental health in Ireland, and he has written numerous books, as you know, so I am honoured to have him there.
And it's an open invitation. If you're in the city tomorrow night or going up for any reason, or you're in the vicinity of Dawson Street, Hodges Figgis, 6 o'clock, you'd be more than welcome to meet Lucy. Brendan will be there as well, and the book will be officially launched. Going back to the text and the story in the book as well, we're all familiar with the amount of people and the millions who left this country and headed for America all those years ago, never to come back. You obviously then, in researching this book, just going back to this point, was it in a way like you perhaps putting together a family tree?
Yes, so it was really important for me to honour the facts, Gerry, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I did not want any historian coming back to me and picking holes in my historical research. So I really immersed myself in the period. Now, I would have loved to have been born in the 1920s.
Would you?
Oh, would have loved it. Would have loved it. Yeah,
The Roaring
absolutely.
20s.
Would have loved it. Would have loved it. Loved the, the simplicity of their innocence, I suppose, is a wonderful way of looking at it. So I did extensive historical research, and I really felt into the music of the time, the people of the time, the behaviour of people. Society was really, really important. So that was incredible part of that journey for me.
Isn't that amazing? 100 years ago. And you're right, probably. The world, well, it came out of a fierce First World War. We didn't know a second one was going to happen. We didn't have nuclear weapons at that stage. We didn't have the communication ability we have today to know what's happening in an instant the other side of the world. And yet, you would have loved to have lived then. It says a lot for it, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And part of it, they had the Spanish flu in 1918.
Yes.
Yeah, huge amount of likenesses to what we experienced as well with COVID. So really it is fascinating when you go back and you realise that we're all living the same lives, just with different opportunities.
Absolutely. The book is called Yankeeland, and it's available where? On Amazon?
You will be able to get it on Amazon.ie in 24 hours. Hodges Figgis have it, books upstairs. But if anyone Googles it, looks up Yankeeland, Lacy Fewer, and you'll also find it on my website. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook.
It's been my pleasure. Lovely to meet you. See you for round 2 when the next one appears.
I will most definitely be here,
Thank
Gerry.
you, Lacy
Thank
Fewer.
you so much.